I've got 1 minute for somebody to come rushing through the door. According to my watch, but
And then Georgie, what I'll do is I'll do like last time and I'll just stop recording after it's done and then you can close it out.
okay.
See that anybody on there is supposed to be, if anybody's on there that's supposed to be part of the closed meeting.
And it's only gonna be like 5 minutes, you might, and Jillian's not here, you might stay into the minutes for it, for us, because it's nothing that you can't hear. I'd rather have you do minutes than me.
But then I gotta try and get the minutes.
I do have some handwritten notes from the last one, if you don't get the notes from that one. I can piece something together if you need to.
Yes, I need you to.
Okay. All right, we're good.
All right, I'd like to call the finance committee meeting to order at 5:30. So we can do introductions. So it's introductions over first. Ben Kistner, board treasurer.
Ed Van Halen, board.
Teddy Rowland board.
Tom Holcomb, staff.
Georgie McNamara, staff.
Amanda George staff.
Kristen Yates, staff. Tracy Mott, staff. Amy Newport, staff.
Amy Armstrong, Children's Center for the Vision Care Representative.
And online.
Tina Maloney, Navarro staff.
Jillian Braun, staff.
Robin Meyer staff.
Oh, Kelly McGillis, TNC Community.
That we can move into Tom and the presentation of March financial statements.
Right. Here on the screen here. So from where I sit, I need binoculars to see the numbers. Let me see if I can improve things a bit. Okay, so now there's some big numbers. Oh. All right, so on the balance sheet. And I'm not going to insult you by reading all the numbers to you tonight, so if you have questions, by all means, stop me as we go and let's talk. There are 3 things worth highlighting, I think, on the balance sheet. One is that our cash position remains very strong. As you can see from this, we're if you combine cash and segregated reserves, we've got roughly $1 million more in liquid assets now than we did this time last year. The other thing that's notable, we have close to $1 million more in estimated taxes receivable. And that's primarily in the current year. And so that's because of the big increase in the levy that we got toward the end of last year. So at last year at this time, we thought 3/12 of our revenue would be 2.2 million. This year, we believe it'll be close to 3 million. So times 4 will be close to 12 million for the year. And the third thing that's worth pointing out on the balance sheet is that our fixed assets are almost exactly $1 million more than last year. And that, as you can very quickly see, is all about the vehicles line. Since this time last year, we have purchased, let's say, 13 or 14 vehicles 4 or 5 of those with, federal 5310 money and the rest, out of our own budget. As a result of those 3 things that were each about $1 million in magnitude, we have about $3 million more in assets, bottom line balance sheet. The liability side of the balance sheet are very similar from year to year. So as a result, we've got about $3 million more in fund balance for the taxpayers.
Hey, Tom, could you go back up to segregated reserves? I was looking at, just curious, why in March 31st, why 2021, 138 segregated reserves? If you can scroll over, I'm sorry, to the right.
Oh, in a previous year.
And it was in 2021. It just stuck out. I was curious.
So, yeah, so,
I figured it was COVID.
yeah. Because interest rates were so very low, we didn't have any investments. Treasury notes were yielding tiny fractions of numbers.
Yeah.
And so there just wasn't any point in segregating anything. Under our operating reserve policy, we really should have had them segregated in some other account other than the operating account, which I figured out sometime last year and moved some money.
Sure. Okay.
And then when interest rates went up, it became a lot easier to have that money segregated.
Makes sense. Thank you.
All right. This income okay, so I'm going to make this smaller, make it make any sense. That was better. All right, so you can see here on the capital budget that our capital budget had $527,600 budgeted for the year. No, that's what we've spent for the year on new vehicles. We had $444,800 budgeted. As you might guess, I'll be asking for a budget amendment tonight to make that look prettier. The reason for that is that we bought a vehicle with insurance proceeds from the vehicle that got totaled last year. So it showed up here as a purchase. We weren't really out cash out of our bank account because it came out of insurance proceeds from the total vehicle. The recording of the total vehicle was in last year, but it took 3 months for the insurance company to cough up the money. So that's what's going on there, but I'll be asking during the board meeting for a budget amendment on a few things, including that. The only renovations that we've recorded in the first 3 months of the year was a project at Southeast to replace almost all of the light fixtures in the building. I think it is literally all of the ones on the production floor at Southeast. And most of that got done during at the very end of 2022, but we didn't declare it complete and capitalize it until this year because we were waiting for dimmers, which they were able to put on switches, and now they've got a lot more control over the lights. And I think those dimmers are done in 3 or 4 different sections, so you can have brighter lights in one part of the workshop if you want. And so I think that's a major improvement. The other thing really about Southeast is that over the years, because it's so close here, over the years, whenever we wanted to try out a new fixture, we went to Southeast and put it up. So if you would look, we got to a point where if you looked up at the roof, or up at the ceiling, there was just a comedy of a collection of different light fixtures. So they're now uniform. You know, that's the story there. We continue to purchase computers to replace our Dell Latitudes as they go out of warranty with Microsoft Surface. That process is continuing apace. I have the detailed fixed asset schedule, which you're certainly welcome to look at your materials and the details as you wish to do that, but just mention that these lines that mention the Job One workshop will obviously be coming off soon as we can get those deeds drafted. All right, so this is the income statement for the 3 months ended March 31st, so the first 3 months of the year. We've got about $5.1 million in total revenue compared to 4.4 for the same period last year. And that $800,000 difference really is all about the tax revenue line, top line. Here again, that's all about the increase in the levy last year. So we call it. Obviously, our investment income looks a lot stronger. The first 3 months of 2023, we've got $14,000 in investment interest plus $123,000 in off the suite accounts. So interest rates significantly higher, Teddy. I didn't bring my graph this time, but significantly higher now than they were a year ago.
The mandated reserve that we had, remind me of what that number is.
Yeah, 1,850,000.
Okay.
And if you don't mind waiting, I'd like to talk about that in a little more
Okay.
detail at the
I
end.
won't. I don't mind waiting.
Okay, great. Because I don't plan to spend a lot more time on financial statements. What I've done. So we have spent $700,000 more dollars through the first 3 months than we had this time last year, and I'm pretty proud that the administrative line is actually a hair lower, which means that all of that $700,000 went into mission. Or the appropriate terminology is program expenses. Our net is about the same as last year. Shrink this some more. This word, sorry. Sorry.
Went more.
Yeah. This page will tell you that for the 3 months that we're talking about, we are about $474,000 under budget on the revenue side. And that's all about support coordination. We are also $281,000 under budget on the expense side, support coordination. So that relationship is reflective of the fact that we have had a lot of openings for support coordinators, especially at the beginning of January. We still had lots of openings. We've gotten to where we're in a much better position in terms of the number of openings. That means we're spending a lot of time training people who are not billing yet. And when you do that, you increase the expense side and you don't increase the revenues. So we're working to make those numbers closer to each other. But that's kind of the big story on the income statement. Yeah.
Is it feasible to ever be in the black at this point on the support issue? At the current billing rate.
The current billing rate. I'll let Georgie or Amanda.
Well, this won't be the current billing rate.
I mean,
So we have 13 new support coordinators that aren't billing.
right,
Your point though is the hourly rate.
the hourly.
Oh,
billing rate,
got it.
Hourly billing rate. Yeah. I know that we haven't had, we made 9 years, 8 years, we haven't had a.
We have not had an increase, and I think that we've put that in a previous report that we're gonna have to watch those numbers, and if it starts to dip into the levy, when the board originally voted to do support coordination, it was not to come out of levy funds. So if it starts to get to the point, now we do have some, in the past, we've actually earned more than we billed, or I'm sorry, earned more than we spent on support coordination, so there's some time. But yeah, there may be a decision that needs to be made about whether or not you want to go into levy funds, and if not, whatever we're gonna do.
What's our current rate?
150 or something.
68.
But only about, 60 to 70% of the support coordinator's time is actually billable, so that rate is spread out more, plus it covers all the unbillable.
What's this one? You got to go with that.
in there.
Well, they must have-
And we need to do a lot of legislative advocacy for the coming session.
How do we do that?
Well,
I don't know.
I can send you out links to where you find out who your legislatures are, and you just start communicating with them. Talk to them, write to them, email them, call them, go down to Jeff City and hang out in their office. To increase the rate to TCM.
What should it be?
They were gonna give us 19.
It was gonna be like $123 maybe. So, yeah, right?
Nothing.
Yeah, it just didn't get included in the budget. But it was based on a rate study that didn't come out till after the governor only made his recommendations. So it was kind of an uphill battle this session anyway.
That they did direct support. That was great.
What was that?
They did increase some for direct support professionals, which was good. But we didn't quite get there.
Okay.
The other things I'd point out on the income statement, and again, I'm sorry, you can't really see those numbers, but most of the other revenue lines are pretty close to budget, and DOT is actually about $170,000 under budget on the expense side. So that's obviously a significant issue, and off the top of my head, I would say friendly fuel prices are probably the biggest factor there.
Sell labor as well.
Yeah. Open positions.
So we fully staffed now.
We can cover the routes. And we have expansion built in the budget this year to add some driver positions, so we can be more flexible with routes there. So we haven't hired those, but we can cover the routes.
We gotta speak directly. Yeah, on the right one. So through 3 months, DOT is $53,000 under budget on their payroll line, which is 9.2%. So it's not a small part of it. No, you'd like for me to talk a lot about that, but
Only if I
It's a mystery what it is.
so, at the end of March, we had 4 treasury notes, each $500,000. We added another one in April. So we're doing our best to get the most, out of our idle cash. And we'll talk a little bit about idle cash. As soon as I'm confident you're done looking at financial statements. So does anybody have a question about financial statements that we have? Let's show them. Okay. So then I guess that's the end of the financial statement section, but under new business, I'd be happy to, address something. You know, are we under new business now?
We are,
Okay.
yeah,
So, last month, the topic came up about, reserves and what's the correct amount of reserves and that sort of thing. And so I'd like for us to start a conversation about reserves and about, but I hope eventually the culmination will be, updating and altering the operating reserve policy. I'm not interested in going through the process, Eddie, that you all went through the last time you adopted an operating reserve policy. I'm not interested in talking about it every month in great length for a year's time. So I'm thinking 5 or 10 minutes at a time over 2 or 3 or 4 months might not be unreasonable. So what I wanted to do was start to think about the definition of a reserve and what it means. So the term reserve is not a formal defined term in accounting literature. It's used informally in a lot of different ways with a lot of different meanings. And so we kind of have to be careful as we have this discussion, make sure we're talking about the same thing. So as Teddy, as you brought up, our written policy says that our operating reserve is $1,850,000. Now, that policy in and of itself doesn't really create anything, right? We can have that policy, but if I've only got $1 in the bank, then I don't have $1,850,000 in reserve. Similarly, if I've got $10 million in the bank, maybe I should think about our reserve in some other way other than what the number is in the policy.
So my thought was, like, I can't recall how we ever came up with that number, as opposed to a percentage of, say, our budget, or a percentage, which seems like a lot more logical to me if we use a percentage. And I don't know what that percentage should be. I know where I work, we have, the state requires a 3% mandated contingency reserve. So that's what we do, and that I see in our budget line. But I don't know, what does 1.85 represent of our, I guess, budget would be the
Significantly less than 10%, right? Our total operating budget is just under 22 million. So you could, I mean, the auditors sent us some literature about reserves, and if you read that, it says that as I have told you for years, the answer to every question is it depends. But If you think of it in terms of percentages and the way that we like to use our reserve, backstop other organizations when there's disasters and that sort of thing, it makes sense to me that we would want to be looking at a considerably higher percentage than that. It's something in the neighborhood of 50%.
50%.
I'm just throwing out numbers at this point, but, and obviously it's.
So many months, like, I think that was another thing that I can recall having discussion about was if all of our money stopped today, how many months could we go on what we got?
Yeah, and so a 50% reserve would mean 6 months.
Clay County does a year. And what's, happen in November?
Oh, when you look at the budget. Maybe 11, 12 months.
This is the total budget.
Yeah, but they only have one employee. Everything that they do is they give the money out. So
And they don't do support coordination that week. They just do grants.
they subcontract support coordination and they get the proceeds if there's any proceeds. So no headache, just a check.
Good job if you can get it.
Right. But we got a lot of terrific staff, so.
So I was going to mention if, as I said, our formal reserve, 1,850,000. I looked and last year, the low point of our operating account plus investments was the end of November, we were at 6.2 million. Those give you a couple of sort of benchmarks to start thinking about.
For cash reserves, when I came into the
Into COVID,
you know,
March of 2020, which would have been the very beginning of COVID, we had just a hair over 10 million. Yes. Yes, it put us in a strong position, and we managed the cash carefully even as we tried to backstop some other organizations.
I think it's really important, just trying to make sure that. That's what it's about. You know, sound capture reserve. So especially when it's something like COVID.
Well, the sin would be if there are unmet needs out there and we're sitting on that.
Absolutely, that's part of it. It's going to-
So you've got to figure out, how do you balance that? How do you make sure we're putting the resources that we have to work and still making sure we can continue to work a year from now or 5 years from now.
But we're still a safety net.
So that's as far as I wanted to go tonight, is to just start thinking about what those things mean. Probably if we're going to set a target, I think we should think about reserves in terms of the low point during the year, right? If you look at our cash balances right now, that gives you a pretty false sense of security because we've got virtually all the tax money that we're going to get from, until very end of November. You got to make it last. I think that's all I've got.
Is there any old business? You can take care of. I don't think there was anything previously. Okay. Is there any public comment? From anybody?
Yeah.
Our guests.
Our guests.
We're public over here.
Anybody online? No? Well, then, I have a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Sorry, that was down. 87th Street is deep.
Oh, yeah. I went to the zoo.
Gregory,
Yeah.
I didn't turn around and come back down. I went Gregory thinking I could say he'll cut it, but I can't.
It can be done, but you gotta know where you're going when you get up to the goal. September-ish is what they're estimating.
So it's probably gonna be early twenty.
If you're going that direction, you can go this way, I can get back to Gregory, but I just think it's faster to go different. Oh, Deer in the dark. Of course, you want me dark, yeah.
So, you're. Another one. That's good.
Yeah.
It's maybe 3.
Do you? I came in the other direction. I don't know. How am I gonna get here if I can't work? If I come from home, there's gonna be a problem. We sort that out. I was gonna ask that.
You go to Gregory, turn around.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you come from the south, you can go up 71
Yeah.
and get off the 85th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
exactly how it went. Okay.
Oh, crap, I can't get up there.
I got it. The office sent me one and make a business move on 4:05. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and call this April Board of Directors meeting here at ETOS to order. Quick introduction of board and guests. My name is George Mitchell, board chair. Ed Van Halen, board.
Teddy Rowland board.
Open staff.
May board.
Georgie McNamara, staff.
Ben Kistner, board treasurer.
Vivian Kusacek, board member.
Robin Myers, staff.
Kelly McGillis, TNC Community. Danielle Schulte, representative for Children's Center for the Visually Impaired.
Amy Newport, staff.
Amanda George, staff.
And Diane Joblin.
And for those that are online,
Shannon Maloney, Navarro staff.
Joseph Jefferson with Ability KC.
Jillian Braun, staff.
Brian Hogan, Blue Valley Industries.
great. Do you have anyone else that we haven't seen or heard from? Okay. Moving on the agenda, we have the secretary's report for March. That information was sent out via email. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review that. And can I have a motion at this moment to show those minutes approved as submitted?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, is there a second? 1 second. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Okay, those minutes approved.
Who seconded it? And thank you.
All right. Danielle. You are up.
Is it okay if I stand kind of over there? Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Schulte. I'm the Director of Therapy and Early Intervention Services for Children's Center for the Visually Impaired, which you'll also know as CCDI. CCDI has a 71-year history here in Kansas City. We celebrated 70 years last year with a nice gala and good opportunity to reconnect with a lot of our community partners and donors after, several years of uncertainty around COVID. I have a small video I would like for everyone to have an opportunity to view. This is a brand new video for us. And it kind of showcases some of our families. Ironically, both of the families that are featured here are Jackson County families, receiving ETOS funded services as well, so.
Vera is, oh, this is kind of cool. She is a 3.5-year-old little girl who is quite opinionated, even though she can't talk. Or she can talk, but she does it in her own ways.
I remember the day that we went to the ophthalmologist, he gave us the initial diagnosis that Lewis wouldn't see, he didn't think he would see anything. And then when we came here and he had that initial evaluation, it was apparent to us because it was like finally sitting in a room where people were excited to learn about our son and what was kind of going on with him and what he could see and what he couldn't see.
Vera was born, she had a traumatic brain injury at birth and has thus become known that she had cortical visual impairments and cerebral palsy and developmental and physical delays. Those are just a couple of things about her, but in general, she's quite like a fun little opinionated kid. We joke that we know more about her dislikes sometimes than we do her likes. But she lets us know what she doesn't want.
Success is not just for the child, success is also for that family. So it's a family learning to help their child navigate this world, build those skills that they're going to need. And that can look really different for every single family and child.
Louis was born with some extra fluid on his brain called hydrocephalus. We found that out about day 1 or day 2. Soon after, he had a major surgery where he got a shunt placed to help get rid of some of that fluid on his brain. He was diagnosed with several other things after that, one being a visual impairment.
I love to see kids coming in day after day and doing things that people outside of this building probably would have never thought they could do.
To have this in the neighborhood is just phenomenal. You don't have teachers for visually impaired kids everywhere, but we are so fortunate to live in Kansas City and to be so close to CCDI and have all these resources right here in our back pocket. And I don't know if we would have that if we lived somewhere else. With CCDI, it doesn't feel like Louis gets lost in the crowd. I mean, he knows everybody in the building. He walks down the hall. The first person he says every time, he runs up to the security guard's desk and says, "Hi, Mr. Mark."
The difference that we make is unmatched anywhere in the city. We are always going above and beyond for our kids. It's a pretty cool thing to get to be part of that.
Vera in particular has some medical complexities and they handle it so well with grace and respect of my child. It's really heartwarming to just see that where they're all at different levels, but the teachers are meeting them where they need to be and they're able to interact in the same classroom.
I'm a teacher myself, and what I admire about these teachers here is that they really do care.
Yeah.
And they love our Lewis. That makes us happy when we can send him here to school and we know that he's being loved and cared for.
It's been great for her, like meeting new people. I think success is also a smile on her face.
It's night and day, just where he was to where he is now.
I will say that video really features our preschool program for our 3 to 7-year-old students. But the children that are primarily funded through ETOS is our early intervention program, Birth for Free. So those that are being seen in the natural environment, that the girls through first steps for. And then some of those big 2-year-olds who are also in our preschool program. So some of the children that are wandering around in there are 2-year-olds, but we do serve 2 to 7-year-olds in our center-based program. We additionally now, as we were talking about legislation and the importance there was a recent act passed in Missouri called the BRIGHT Act, which is the Blind Students' Right to Independence, Training, and Education Act. And that is huge legislation for the students that we work with. It's really going to help hold districts more accountable for addressing the child's vision needs Because oftentimes, as you can imagine, maybe a child with multiple disabilities may be seen as a child who needs a lot of physical assistance, cognitive assistance, that it may water down the visual impairment and that the needs around that. So this act is really going to hold districts accountable for that. And so we're working hard to educate districts, early intervention programs about just the necessity of having teachers who are visually impaired involved in child's education from the beginning. And that has been a lot of work that our leadership team, who's pretty new as a whole, there's 6 of us, and none of us served on our leadership team 2 years ago. We have a new executive director who came in as our chief operating officer, and then quickly became our interim executive director and was chosen as the executive director last July. So there's been a lot of change within our program, but we're really eager to share a lot of our information. So I shared prep materials as far as our menu of services. And this one I picked for you guys because it's really about our early intervention program and what we can provide and how we can support further beyond, just our little neck of the woods, and make an impact across the state. And we get referrals from Kansas too, so we do try to help guide them toward Johnson County Infant Toddler or Kansas State School for the Blind for additional services. Also some contingents on our, kind of our leadership as far as our program, but also our teachers with visually impaired. They are sought after. Trying to get teachers with visually impaired has been very challenging, and we are fully staffed for next year, which is super exciting because we'll be able to serve more kids and have greater capacity to get information out. And then just our regular brochure. But I love this. Got lots of really cute pictures in too. Those really great students. And then our trolley run is actually our largest fundraiser, and it is this coming Sunday. It's our 35th. So a nice stroll from Waldo to the plaza, and it's a lot of fun. If anybody's interested in running, walking, strolling, whatever you'd like to do. Any questions for me pertaining to services or?
Can you say more about your relationship with the school districts? How do you?
Right. Yes.
Your
So oftentimes, because we have served the children in their homes for to 3, we are part of that transition process in the school district as children are aging into the schools. Now, some schools will say, we don't really have the services to support a teacher with visually impaired or orientation and mobility in particular, because often they'll have PT, OT, speech, but they won't have those pieces, and they will send the children to us. So as an IEP team decision, they will select CCBI as placement. In other circumstances, we will go out and serve the students in their home district, which is really, we love the blend. We love to be able to do both. We love to meet the programs where they are and where their need is, because, oftentimes they will have those other services, but not those core vision services. So right now, we have 4 classrooms, and that would be our 2-year-olds to our 7-year-old, or I guess she's almost 8, our oldest student right now. And we have about 10 students per classroom. And we have 4, which is a reduction. And COVID sort of hit us hard on that enrollment piece for center-based services. We are seeing an uptick. I was kind of concerned for a while there at Jackson County. We were serving primarily a lot of Eastern Jackson County as far as, Blue Spring, a lot of suburban. We are now seeing an increase in the referrals that we're getting, and those that are following through with getting functional vision evaluations more in the city center, which is really, really nice. But the district relationship can go on long term if they transition out and that district still doesn't have those services. Currently, we are serving itinerant, meaning outreach services into Hickman. We've had relationships with Center, Port Osage, Independence. We've had some relationships with them too. And but KCPS is our primary district that actually utilizes our center-based services the most. So it's been a really great rural, urban, a lot of mix.
So,
Yes.
how many teachers do you have in order to provide those services to the districts?
We have 45 staff members total. We have 10 teachers that are visually impaired this year and 3 orientation and mobility instructors. But then additionally, I have about 10 other combined physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapists.
And who does the transportation?
Districts transport as part of their IEP. If parents can elect to stay with us and pursue a parent pay agreement with us with a subsidy, or it's not subsidized, but a sliding scale tuition rate. And in that case, then the parents are responsible for transportation.
So I just have to say my son has services completely and who's the separate place.
I love early intervention. I'm a physical therapist and early intervention is my very favorite, so.
So how many in a typical year do you see, children who are born and diagnosed as being visually impaired? So in this region that you serve, how many new parents come in? New families come in?
We have had 200 referrals to date in this school year. So our fiscal year runs August to July. And in that time, we've had 200. And then we've served 250. So that could be functional vision evaluations, ongoing service, consultation pertaining to a specific student within a district, those kind of things.
And what do people do if they don't live close to the urban area? Because you see this.
It's a huge challenge and it's something we've really kind of spent our time sharing with parents as teachers and Missouri First staff speaking to the regional offices and kind of explaining that, you know, it is not easy to find these professionals. And then some children go without the diagnosis, they're under-identified. So how do we partner with you? And it's not ideal, but COVID proved to us that we can provide virtual services if it meets the needs of the family. And, you know, under the Missouri First Steps, it's a primary provider model. So I, as a physical therapist, may be the primary provider, and I could come into a home, I could set up my laptop or iPad, and that teacher of the visually impaired could join us, and I could still get great information for how to provide strategies to that family, you know, during my time with them during my ongoing session. So that's kind of what we've aimed to do. And we currently have a teletherapy authorization for a child in Cape Girardeau. So that would be our farthest reach right now for direct ongoing services, but it is virtual. And it's working, you know, they're not finding those services elsewhere. So that's our goal, is that if it's, you know, it doesn't need to be us you refer to, but if you've got community providers out there, please work to identify and get the services in place for the children. Well, thank you all. We certainly appreciate the partnership with ETOS, and I love learning more. I've become more involved just within the last few years, as Tracy and I got to know each other and now Amy. And I tremendously appreciate the support that ETOS offers. Thank you. And we're learning even more. Amy and I are working hard to try to get more involvement, parent groups and all the things. So really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Executive Director's report. Georgia.
Can I send that out to you guys? If you have any questions.
Well, so it sounds like our legislators gave some money, but not enough, and kind of ignore the part of it.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Sort of. I think that part of it is that we really didn't have good information to give until after the governor's budget recommendations already came out. So we were trying to play catch up and get money added in. And nobody really thought that was going to happen. We kind of hoped, but we didn't really think so. So I think our next year's our year. We've got our hopes pinned on that. There's still about 3 weeks left in the legislative session. There could be a miracle, but nobody's they're going to be really busy trying to the House to look at the Senate stuff and the Senate look at the House's stuff and get that budget passed. They adjourn May. Mid-May. I couldn't tell you the exact date right offhand, I'm sorry. Because sometimes it feels like the quicker they adjourn, the less damage they do.
Any sense of which one of these property tax issues is going to have legs?
Yeah, we think that Representative Reedy's bill, it paired with some of Crawford's stuff, which it's the one where they're gonna go with the manufacturer's suggested retail price of the vehicle that has been depreciated according to the depreciation schedule, and the addition that we think is going to go into it is Crawford's addition, which makes that 20 years of depreciation instead of the 10 or 15 that are in some of the other pieces. Senator Eigel continues to want there to be pretty much no property tax.
Yeah.
And we've had some people from Mac DBS who have gone to testify in some families, and he's incredibly hostile to them. I mean, just openly aggressive and hostile to them. But people still keep going and they still keep talking, so.
He's gonna run for governor?
Well, you know, we can't lobby, we can only educate. So we will educate you guys that Senator Idle does seem to have trouble.
So
setting things he doesn't like.
that's a pretty narrow hit on vehicles. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, it's also, it also takes it down from 33% to 31%. So that'll be a little bit more of a hit. Honestly, I haven't gotten good numbers from Jackson County. I had asked them for the numbers so that I could report to the MOLIS system, but they said they do that, they take care of that. And I just send them the emails and.
Which I do think that the county had at one point, because people got hit so hard on their cars last year anyway, that they were themselves advocating for some changes on the vehicle. I mean, there's like a mandated that you have to use like Kelly Blue Book or one of
Yes.
those things that would higher different, and you have to take the October number, you know, that was the kind of the dispute at that time.
And I agree with that, you know, but there aren't too many people I'm sure there are people driving cars that are over 20 years old. I'm sure there are, but I don't think that the numbers are so great that it's gonna make it so we can't pay our bills. Yeah, I really think that's minimal. I just couldn't tell you the exact
So
numbers.
the one that I was wondering about was this issue with the over 65.
I don't think that one has legs.
Okay.
I really don't, but I could be wrong.
I mean, that was the one I was thinking.
I'm worried about it as well. We all are, because it sounds like such a great idea and such a kind thing to
And there's a
do.
lot of people who are supporting it.
And
But I think with certain restrictions.
we
I
really
would
think
see
that the
it more-
fiscal impact statements are gonna be what makes the difference there.
School districts will get hard.
Yeah, very fun.
Any questions for Georgia?
This, this audit thing, yeah, I think, was it Medicaid?
Yeah, Missouri Medicaid.
That's no big thing.
No, they look at what we do all the time. I was under the impression, and I was wrong, that they only came and did an audit like every few years or if something triggered it. But apparently they're there looking all the time. And they're the ones who caught a couple of instances of the person already being deceased before our billing went in. So we're not in trouble. They don't think we're trying to steal money or anything like that. They would have preferred it if we'd have found it. And so that's what we want to make sure that we do from now on is do really good audits and make sure we catch something like that. But because it was 7 different support coordinators, that showed us that we needed a system in place, not that they were naughty support coordinators who needed their hands slapped.
Where are you going on vacation to?
New York City. We're gonna see Wicked and Aladdin on Broadway and eat some pizza and all that stuff.
Any other questions for Georgia? Okay, do we have any new business to discuss?
We do. It didn't make it onto the agenda in time, but we do. We talked a little bit in the finance committee about a budget amendment. So Tom, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so several of these are, I'm requesting some budget amendments. Several of them are related to transactions we've already approved or agreed to, but didn't specifically amend the budget for them. And some of them were things that I mentioned during the finance committee meeting today as well. So I'll share my screen, and I think I can blow this up big enough to actually see it. All right, let me find my little plus.
While he's doing that, George, the finance committee report got left off the agenda, so we might still need to do that.
All right, so there are several items, and I like to go through them all. And if it sounds like everybody's going to be okay with this, maybe you can adopt them in mass rather than one at a time. That of course is up to you. The first item on here, the gain on disposition of the Yuma property. So this is the property that is being deeded to Job One. Under accounting principles, that gets treated as if we sold it for its fair market value and then made a contribution to Job One of fair market value of the property. So it's treated as if we liquidated the property and then gave the money. So, Job One's own appraisal appraised the property at $1.4 million. That includes both tracts, the workshop and the vacant lot adjacent. Our current book value is $416,000. That number goes down slightly each month. So the actual gain may end up being slightly higher than the 983,567, but that's what I'm asking you to add. That basically shows up as additional revenue on the budget. Then the next item is the contribution of the property, the 1.4 million, plus the two new funding requests that were approved. So that's a total of $2,025,000 if you include the 1.4 million value of the property. The other things, I mentioned the bus that was purchased with insurance proceeds for $97,600. So I'd like to add that to the capital budget for the new vehicles one. Under our budget process, you all don't budget depreciation. I add that in, but I just want you to know that as a result of that additional $97,600 asset, I'll be adding almost $20,000 in depreciation expense to the operating budget. Renovations, two projects at Southeast with the same story. They were both things that we thought we would get done in 2022. As a result, we didn't put them on the original 2023 budget. Then life intervened. We didn't get done. So I mentioned the lights project. We also have done some replacement of some windows there. So that's asking for additional $34,000 and some change on the capital budget in the renovation section. And then the final project, we're replacing the switches in our own computer network here. Every time we turn around, the number is bigger. You may have experienced that in some of the things you've bought as well. So we thought we were going to get this done in December. They ordered the switches and then they ordered the cables, and one of the cables still hasn't come in. So the switches start to go in when that cable arrives, which is supposed to be the end of May. We'll believe it when we see it. There's already $70,000 in the capital budget for improvements to the computer system. I'm willing to take that $70,000 on that switch project, but I need another 15 to pay for the whole 85. So I'm asking for 15,000 added to the furniture and equipment section. So 15,000 there, 34,000 on the renovations, 97.6 on the bus purchase. Those are the capital budget implications. And then on the operating budget, we're adding $983,000 of revenue, $2 million of expense, and we'll probably be back soon. It seemed like bad luck to propose it now, but we'll probably be back soon to add gain on the sale of the Grandview property. Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay. Okay, so we see what the ask is for. We have a motion to approve these requests.
I don't know how to word it.
That's like, do you remove it?
Move to amend the budget.
Would it cover back, we went through it kind of one by one? Or do you want to do a massive one?
One way to word it, regardless of which you go with, one way to word it could be a motion to adopt the budget amendments as presented,
Right.
and we could attach this to the minutes.
Yeah, I vote for that.
I was like,
Nice motion.
Good job, guys. We teamwork was good work. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you.
New addendum here to the agenda is the finance committee. So Ben, if you want to give us a report from finance.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Tom presented to us in the finance committee meeting, the cash reserve remains strong. Roughly $1 million more in liquid assets this time this year compared to the same time frame last year, which is 3/31/2022 versus 3/31/2023. Revenue year to date is up compared to the same time last year, mostly entirely due to the increase in the tax levy. Estimated also increased estimated tax receivables as well, quite a bit from this time this year to the same time frame last year. And all in all, we are in a good place financially. Is there any questions in that?
You have a motion to accept that report?
somebody.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Sir, any old business for us to discuss? Okay, any public comment from anyone in the gallery?
I just wanted to introduce Amy Newport. She's part of our agency relations team that started in January. And I think I had talked to you about having the agency relations job be part of advocate development. And so she's really going to try to help build that advocacy network that's out there in Jackson County. So.
What's your name?
Amy Newport. And I'll actually be presenting with Jennifer, other and Garrett Group. So I'll be presenting.
Where are you gonna be?
SCCBI,
When is that?
May 10th at 6 o'clock. Yes.
We're just hoping that each agency that she can sort of help with whatever efforts make the most sense, and for them, it's a parent group. So.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Got the gallery. Anyone online? Any public comments?
This is Joseph Jefferson with Ability KC. Let me take off my video or turn on my video. I want to just share with you that Ability KC has submitted an application to the Health Forward Foundation, which some of you may be aware recently announced $4.5 million funding for advocacy efforts as it relates to health disparities at the intersection with communities of color. So we've put together a coalition that involves, of course, Ability KC, UMKC's Institute for Human Development, University of Kansas Lifespan Institute, Swope Health, and Children's Mercy, and IATOS with Georgie's assistance in whatever way that looks in terms of advocacy or data collection, et cetera. So we have submitted that proposal. It involves $220,000 that would be spread across the nonprofit provider members of that coalition. We're expecting a decision on this coming Monday as to whether the application will proceed to the next step, and look forward to bringing you good news hopefully after Monday.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay. Let's go ahead and move into closed session. Before we do that, can I get a motion to go to closed session? We can start voting.
I will make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to the revised statutes of Missouri 610.021 regarding real estate.
Motion, have a second? Second. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great start. You said- you have to- you said-
First thing-